The platinum industry has been facing significant challenges. Last week's appalling incident around Lonmin's Marikana operation is illustrative of part of that challenge, the tense and violent competition between two unions for dominance in the western limb of the platinum belt. Earlier in the year, Impala Platinum's operation was also affected by an illegal strike that turned violent and cost the company weeks of production. Claude Bisak, Managing Director of Unomix, joins us in studio to share his views on what is happening in the sector. Claude, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you for having me again.
Do you expect contagion within the platinum sector?
Yeah, I do. I think, unfortunately, the sign is there that is going to contagion. We have seen that already, some signs that it's affecting other companies, or starting to affect other companies. There was a violent strike beginning of the year at Impala Platinum. This time Lonmin. There are signs that AMCO intends to carry on the game, and that they are probably going to be successful in achieving some of their goals to replace NUM and change the balance of power within individual companies as well as within the industry as a whole.
In terms of the rest of the mining sector, perhaps that's where you were going with the discussion. It's not going to be contained into just the platinum stocks. Is it going to be broader based?
Well, that's difficult to say. I think at this point we don't have enough information for that. The possibility is that once AMCO feels that they have achieved their goals in platinum, they would be tempted to take other sectors. It's highly likely. Why not, after all? I mean, if they are on a winning streak, and a winning strike, may I say, unfortunately for their members who were killed. But for the rest of them, I think nothing changes. In fact, the incidents last week probably simply radicalized the game and makes the gain even more important for them. But I think what's interesting is not just what they are going to do, because we can't simply say this is a platinum or a Lonmin problem. There are political implications. I mean, NUM is a political affiliated union. It has a lot to lose, and I think by extension the alliance, the COSATU and the ANC have a lot to lose from what's happening here.
Isn't it that the category of worker that's really disaffected here is a rock driller, and that person is really at the beginning of the value chain of mining? If he doesn't break the rock, correct, then nothing else happens. Mining stops. Correct. Do you and both wage negotiations by AMCO and NUM have not yielded a salary that the rock driller finds fair. Do you think that's a justified concern by the rock driller or not?
I think it's a really complex problem, and I think we're still trying to get our head around this, because there are so many dimensions. Certainly the issue of representation at the level of the companies, issues of negotiations, issues of fairness in the wage negotiation. We've seen a lot of problems initially with some mining companies where the RDOs feel that they haven't been represented adequately. That is possibly the source, the direct proximate cause for what is happening. But I think the way we look at it is that we say, well, this is also happening in a context where we have an increasing amount of dissatisfaction throughout the country at grassroots levels for the performance of the government and delivery. And the sense that maybe the institutions that we have been getting used to in the past 16, 20 years as representing us are not doing such a good job after all. And NUM, for me, is one of those institutions. It's played a crucial role in creating a very stable labor environment in the mining industry in the past 15 years or so. It is being challenged, but is it simply being challenged because it is not able to represent certain classes of laborers who feel that they're not getting their fair share? Or is there something more significant about it, which is telling us that the tectonic plates of South African politics are changing, and they're not changing within the ANC, they're changing outside of it? And that could have enormous implications for the country. And unfortunately, it's happening in a context where the platinum industry is experiencing significant market pressure and cost pressures, so its margin of maneuvers are extremely limited. And at a time where the country is not growing enough to create the kind of dispensation we need for long-term social political stability. So this is interesting in that sense too. You know, what does it mean going forward for the dynamics within the ANC, the dynamics within COSATU, and they are going to have their election very soon, the dynamics within the platinum industry, the dynamics within the country. So it's a very complex problem, and things can go well if government manages this and industry and unions find a way to manage this properly, or it could go a lot worse.
You've got to follow up there. We are running out of time. I'm just cognizant of that.
I've just often wondered, you know, in Germany, and I can tell that you're European, you may be familiar with the supervisory boards that sit either above or alongside the normal boards. But in industries that have national nuances to them, like mining and ownership of mineral rights, wouldn't it be a wonderful thing to have a supervisory board that has worker representation as well as management?
Look, the conversation last Saturday, out of the emergency meeting with the industry, the Chamber of Mine, and NUM, unfortunately AMCU was not invited. I think that's a mistake. But the conversation is going towards some sort of a new dispensation for labor representation and wage negotiations. Perhaps that's a step forward. I'm not quite sure what the answer is, but perhaps that's a step forward in terms of trying to establish some sort of stability there. But indeed, we need to evolve in South Africa the kind of labor relation framework to something which is sustainable. Our problem is that we really have such an unsustainable level of disparity between the people at the top and the people at the bottom. And we have such a vast population which is, you know, at the bottom or nearing the bottom and not getting the benefits of a good education, that unless we find some sort of a new social contract, you know, at the level of industries, by the level of country, we are going to have perennial problems of stability.
Kevin, final question from you for the evening.
I don't have a question, but I think that's the key, is we need a new social contract. During apartheid, opposition parties were banned, and the only legitimate way for people to protest was actually through the unions, which escalated in the 1980s. And we're seeing a replay of that now. It's a form of protest, and it's dysfunctional, and we need a new social contract in order for this to
why is it that, indeed, why is it that in a democracy like South Africa's democracy, which is exemplary in many respects, a whole and growing fringe of the population feels that it has no other way of being heard than to be violent and destroying the very means of its income and or its, you know, places of living? Something is wrong.
Thanks very much for your sentiments and for sharing your opinion. Claude Bisak, Managing Director at Unomix.